The bowling alley was bustling with people. Every lane was filled with either couples out on a date or parents trying to bowl while simultaneously keep an eye on their kids. I had only been working at the bowling alley for a month, but it was definitely the busiest I had ever seen it. I guess maybe the lead up to Halloween brought out the big crowds. The sound of laughter and the sweet sound of the bowling ball hitting in the pins was in the air, which actually made it difficult to concentrate on my job. I had only had a few malfunctions that day, a few balls getting stuck, but all in all it was a pretty good day. I was manning the main desk in the bowling alley and so was responsible for all payments and handing out those funny-looking bowling shoes that make everyone look like a stylish clown. I had to wear a big grin and speak in my best customer service voice in order to please all of the paying customers. I watched out over the lanes and felt a warm feeling in my heart as I watched everyone just having a great time together. It was around 3 o'clock when I saw it happen. I saw the 3 men, probably all dads judging by their blue jeans and tucked-in plaid shirts, approach the bowling lane, bowling ball in hand. It was almost if they were in sync with one another, 'cause they all swung the ball backwards at the same time, they all swung forward at the same time and they all released the bowling ball at the same time. The 3 bowls thudded into the line in almost perfect unison and began to roll down towards the pins. The balls were almost level with each the entire way down the lane, each one heading towards the left side of the pins. Crack! The sound of all 3 balls hitting the pins echoed around the alley and I watched as the balls knocked down the pins that were standing in their way. I saw all 3 of the men look disappointed with themselves and turned and sulked their way back to the machine that retrieves their ball. I then noticed that each of the men had knocked down exactly 4 pins each, leaving 3 sets of exactly 6 pins standing at the end of each bowling lane. Normally, I wouldn't really be paying that much attention to the people bowling, but the synchronized bowling had drawn my attention. I saw the bowling score appear on each of the screens that are positioned above the lane. Each of 3 screens displayed the number 6. The screens then changed to a short animation, like it usually does, but this time, something was different. Normally, the animation is like a weird fever dream that consists of dancing bowling pins and fireworks. That is how this animation started, but it soon began to get a lot darker. An animated bowling pin appeared on screen, danced about for a second, before it stopped and turned towards the front of the screen. I watched as its green eyes slowing changed into a dark red color and then the pin reached up with one of its strange animated arms and grabbed onto its face. It then began to claw at its own face. Wood shavings started to fly off in all directions. It kept clawing and clawing, more and more wood was being removed. It then suddenly stopped and it dropped its hand from in front of its face, and for just a split second, I saw that its face had changed. It had revealed a new face that had been hidden underneath. It didn't stay on screen for long enough to see exactly what it had revealed, but I knew that it was different. It had scratched and removed its wooden exterior and revealed something else underneath. I think I must have been the only one that noticed the strange and disturbing animation because, when I looked round, everyone seemed to be carrying on like usual. I was taken aback by what I had just seen, but in the end, I just thought that maybe it was just a rare animation that only showed up every once in a while. That's what I told myself anyway, even though a part of me wasn't convinced that that's what it was. I continued my shift, not thinking too much about what I had seen, but I did often look at the screens just to see if anything else strange occurred, but it was all normal. The day quickly faded and soon it was closing time, which saw a large number of people make their way to the exit of the bowling alley. At that point, the manager decided it was okay for him to leave too, and so put me in charge of shutting down the bowling lanes, turning off the lights and the pinsetter machine and locking all of the doors. I had been in charge of this a few times before, when the manager wanted to get home early, and so I was fairly confident in what I had to do. I knew that it would probably take an hour or so to shut everything down and leave, and so I put some headphones in and got to work. My first job was to walk down a small walkway that ran parallel to the bowling lanes. This led to the back of the pinsetting machines and would allow me to turn them off. I made my way down and through the small door that led to the back of the machines. I then did the nightly routine of turning them off and making sure that there was nothing jamming or blocking them. Everything seemed clear, and so I switched them off and was about to make my way back out into the main area of the bowling alley. That's when I heard the noise. I heard the unmistakable sound of a bowling ball rolling down the alley. It sounded slow, like someone had gently pushed the ball down the lane and now it was slowing, making its way towards the pins. Only, there shouldn't be any pins at the end of the lane, 'cause I had just switched off the pinsetter. I was surprised when I heard the thud sound of the bowling ball hitting pins and then the sound of those pins falling over. It shouldn't have been possible. I had cleared all the lanes and turned off the machines. I quickly rushed out to see what was happening. When I emerged from the door, I instantly noticed that all of the lights were already off, even though I had left them on. The only light was in the entire alley was coming from one lane. The lane was lit up from start to end. One solitary pin was standing at the end of it, the other 9 laying down around it. I slowly closed the door behind me and continued to stare at the lane that was illuminated, wondering how this was possible. Maybe my manager had come back? But if he had, why would he want to play a game of bowling by himself? It made no sense. I kept staring towards the one pin that remained upright. It looked like it was looking down upon its fallen companions. I expected something to happen, maybe the pinsetter to come down and collect this stray pin, but nothing moved. The pin stayed motionless. I took another step outwards from the door and then another. With every I took, I never averted my eyes from the lit-up bowling lane. I made it to the end of the walkway, and once I had, I started to move towards the lane. I made it to the lane, after feeling my way through the dark, and stood at the end of it. I then heard a whirring noise in front of me and all I could do was stand there, frozen. The whirring sound continued and I could feel that something wasn't right. I didn't know exactly what it was that was making the sound, but soon that mystery was solved. I heard a small clunk, and the whirring stopped. I looked down in front of me and saw a dark green bowling ball sitting in the bowling ball retrieving machine. That was what was making the sound. It was fetching and returning the phantom bowling ball that had been bowling by something unknown. I looked down at the ball and wondered whether or not I should pick it up, but soon decided against it. I looked down the lane once more, waiting for the pinsetter to come down and retrieve the knocked down pins, but it never came. I then heard a laughing sound and saw a flash of light from above me. I looked up and saw that the monitor above the lane had switched itself on. I saw that another animation was playing. This time though, I saw the pin's true face. The dancing pin on the screen still had its wooden exterior removed and underneath there was a face of bright red with pitch black eyes. It stared out with its pupil-less eyes, staring directly towards me. Its mouth was open and it bared a row of sharp, pointed teeth, and I could see that it was laughing. Its laughter echoed around the bowling alley, a deep growling laugh with an occasional high-pitched wheeze. The screen wasn't connected to any speaker and so I shouldn't be able to hear anything, but I could hear the haunting laughter clearly. It burrowed itself into my ears. Suddenly, the laughter stopped and the screen flickered for a moment before turning off again. It turned black and so, once again, the only light in the alley was from the bowling lane. My gaze was then directed back towards the single pin standing at the end of the lane. I watched it for a moment and saw something. At first I wasn't sure it was just in my mind, but no, it was definitely slightly shaking. Side to shook, getting more and more violent with each passing moment. Its gentle rocking turned into violent shakes, like it was having a fit. It then stood still once more, like it had never moved in the first place. A loud cracking sound rang out across the alley, and as it did, I saw a large crack appear along the top of the pin, running downwards towards the ground. I stood there, unable to draw my eyes away from the pin, and so I watched as the crack grew wider. The cracking sound of breaking wood was all I could hear, and I watched on in horror as the pin began to split into two. I saw the pin split directly in the middle and each half of the pin fell towards the ground. At the exact moment that they made contact with the lane floor, the light switched off. I was now in pitch black. I turned to run, unsure exactly what I had witnessed, but I knew that I didn't want to hang around to find out. I felt around my surroundings, making sure I wouldn't run into anything on my quick getaway out of the bowling alley. I ran as fast as I could in the darkness, unsure of what was around me. I then heard the laughter return, this time directly behind me. I felt warm breath against my neck and all I could do was run a little bit faster. I was too afraid to turn around and find out what it was. As I ran, the laughter got closer and closer to the back of me and I could hear it directly in my ear. I kept on running though, and I heard the laughter grow fainter and fainter, and soon it was gone. I turned around, afraid of what I would see, but saw nothing. I did hear something though. A loud scaring sound, like nails running along something plastic. The sound continued and I soon realized it was the sound of something scratching along the bowling balls that sat behind the bowling lane. The scratching had started in the far end of the alley but was coming closer and closer. It scratched across each bowling ball, getting closer to my position. I then heard a bowling ball hit the floor with a thud. Then another ball. Then another. Something was pushing the balls off of the rack. I couldn't see it in the darkness, but I could hear it.